The silver ship moved slowly through space toward the yellow star. Commander Yuki sat in her chair on the bridge, watching the screens show a new solar system. Her blue skin glowed softly under the ship's lights. She had done this job for many years, visiting new worlds and checking if they were safe or dangerous. "We are getting close to the third planet," said Chief Surveyor Hana. She touched the controls with her 4 thin fingers. "The computers say it might be a Class 8 death world." Yuki nodded. Class 8 worlds were dangerous, but her crew had seen them before. They had thick air that could poison you, or animals that were too big and mean. But they could still do their job and leave quickly. Dr. Jinwoo looked at his screen and made a worried sound. He was the team's expert on air and weather. His large eyes got bigger as he read the numbers. "Commander, these readings are very strange. The air has too much oxygen. It would burn our lungs if we breathed it." "How much oxygen?" Yuki asked. 21%. That is enough to kill most species we know." Jinwoo shook his head. "And look at this. The planet has huge storms. Some winds go faster than our ship can fly in atmosphere." Hana checked her instruments again. "I am seeing old crater marks everywhere. This planet has been hit by space rocks many times, big ones that could destroy whole continents." The crew worked quietly, taking measurements and pictures. The planet looked blue and green from space, which usually meant it had water and plants. But the numbers they were getting made no sense. This world should be empty and dead. "Wait," said Hana suddenly. "I'm picking up signals. Artificial signals." Everyone on the bridge stopped what they were doing. Yuki felt her heart beat faster. "Are you sure?" "Yes, Commander. Radio waves in organized patterns. And, oh no." Hana's voice got very quiet. "There are lights on the night side, lots of lights, cities." Dr. Jinwoo stood up so fast his chair spun around. "That is impossible. Nothing could live down there. The oxygen alone would kill any thinking creature we know." Yuki stared at the planet on the main screen. It looked peaceful and pretty, but, according to their tools, it was one of the most dangerous places they had ever found. And somehow, someone was living there. "Pilot Dongyun, take us into a higher orbit," she ordered, "but stay far enough away to be safe." The young pilot's hands shook a little as he worked the controls. "Commander, what kind of beings could survive on a world like that?" "I do not know," Yuki said. She had been exploring space for 30 years. She had seen acid oceans and planets where the ground was on fire. But she had never seen anything like this. A world that should be empty, but was full of life. "The signals are getting stronger," Hana reported. "Multiple sources. They are using electromagnetic waves to talk to each other. Just like we do, but with different patterns." Dr. Jinwoo was reading more data from his machines. "Commander, the surface temperature changes are extreme. In some places it gets hot enough to boil water. In other places it gets so cold that air turns to liquid. How can anything live in such crazy conditions?" "And the weather," added meteorologist Yunbi from her station. "I am seeing storm systems. That would destroy our ship. But they happen all the time down there. Like it is normal." Yuki felt a chill run through her body. Her species came from a world where the temperature never changed more than a few degrees, where the air was always the same and storms were just light rain. The idea of living somewhere that the weather could kill you every day made her sick. "Are we sure there is intelligent life?" she asked. "The signals prove it," Hana said. "But, Commander, I am also detecting something else. Metal objects moving in space around the planet. I think they built satellites. The bridge went completely silent. If the creatures on this death world had space technology, everything changed. The Galactic Council had rules about first contact with new species, but those rules were written for normal species on normal worlds. Get me a full scan of everything, Yuki ordered. Air, water, land, weather, life forms. I want to know exactly what we are dealing with before we report this to the Council. For the next several hours, the crew worked to understand the impossible planet. Each new piece of information made things more confusing and scary. The oceans were full of salt that would poison most creatures. The land had areas where liquid rock came up from underground. There were frozen areas where nothing should be able to live, and hot areas where the air itself was dangerous. But the strangest part was that life was everywhere, not just surviving, but growing and spreading. The creatures on this world had somehow turned the most dangerous planet anyone had ever seen into their home. "Commander," Dr. Jinwoo said in a quiet voice, "I need to change my classification. This is not a Class 8 death world." "What class would you give it?" Jinwoo looked at his data for a long time before answering. "I do not think our classification system goes high enough. This might be a Class 13, maybe higher." Class 13 was the highest rating in their system. It was for worlds so dangerous that just being near them could kill you. No one had ever found intelligent life on anything above Class 10. But if they have space technology, Yuki started to say, then stopped. If creatures from a Class 13 death world had spaceships, what did that mean for the rest of the galaxy? "We need to be very careful," she said finally. "Send a message to the Galactic Council. Tell them we have found something new, something that might change everything we know about life in the universe." As her crew worked to prepare the report, Yuki stared at the beautiful, terrible planet on their screens. Somewhere down there, creatures lived and built cities on a world that should have killed them long ago. She wondered what kind of beings they were, and whether meeting them would be the best thing that ever happened to the galaxy, or the most dangerous. Dr. Minji had seen many strange animals in her career as a xenobiologist. She had studied creatures that lived in boiling mud and others that ate pure energy. But nothing had prepared her for what she was seeing on the screens as their ship scanned. "The third planet! This cannot be real," she whispered, adjusting her scanner for the third time. The readings stayed the same. The planet was covered with creatures that should not exist. In the water, she found animals as big as their spaceship. They had huge mouths full of teeth and could swim faster than most starships. But somehow, smaller creatures lived alongside them without being eaten immediately. On land, the situation was even stranger. There were giant beasts with long necks that ate plants all day. Next to them lived smaller animals with sharp claws and teeth that hunted in packs. The big plant eaters seemed calm, even though they were surrounded by predators. "Commander." "Yuki," Minji called out. "You need to see this. I found flying creatures that are bigger than shuttlecraft. And they are not alone up there. There are thousands of different flying species sharing the same airspace." She showed her data to the bridge crew. On her screen, massive creatures with wings soared through the sky next to tiny ones that moved so fast they looked like blurs. In any normal ecosystem, the big ones would eat all the small ones. But here, they all lived together somehow. "How is this possible?" asked Pilot Dongyun, looking over her shoulder. "On my homeworld, we only have 3 types of flying creatures, and they each live in different parts of the sky, so they do not fight." "That is normal," Minji agreed. "But this planet is not normal. Look at this. She changed her screen to show the ocean scans. Under the water, there are creatures with 8 arms that can change color. They live next to things that look like moving rocks. And there are fish that make their own light in the dark water. Commander Yuki studied the data. Her people came from a world where the biggest animal was about the size of her hand. The idea of creatures big enough to sink ships existing alongside tiny ones seemed impossible. What about plants? Yuki asked. Minji switched to her botanical scans. Even stranger, Commander. There are plants that eat animals, others that can poison you just by touching them. Some grow so tall they reach the clouds, and in the coldest places I found plants that live under ice and snow. Dr. Jinwoo joined them at Minji's station. He pointed to a section of the scan data. Look at this area. The plants there survive in ground that is mostly poison. My instruments show levels of toxic metals that would kill our ship's garden in minutes. But the plants are healthy? Yuki asked. More than healthy. They are growing faster than plants on most paradise worlds. Jinwoo shook his head. It is like they use the poison as food. Pilot Dong-yun decided to take a closer look. With Commander Yuki's permission, he took a small probe ship down toward the planet's atmosphere. He wore 3 layers of protective suits and carried enough emergency air for 2 days. I am entering the upper atmosphere now, he reported over the radio. The air pressure is... Wait, this is wrong. The probe's computers say the air down here would crush most ships. Are you in danger? Yuki asked quickly. No, Commander. The probe is handling it. But I do not understand how flying creatures survive in this pressure. It would squeeze the life out of most birds we know. As Dong-yun flew lower, he started taking pictures of the surface. What he saw made him forget to breathe for several seconds. Commander, there are huge areas covered in ice. But there are black and white creatures walking around on top of it like it is warm ground. And in the hot areas, I see animals that look like they are made of fur living in places where my instruments say the temperature could cook food. Are you sure your instruments are working? Yuki asked. I checked them twice. Commander, these creatures live in temperatures that range from freezing to boiling, sometimes in the same day. Then Dong-yun's probe started shaking. What is happening? Yuki demanded. The weather, Commander. A storm is forming below me. The winds are... This cannot be right. The computer says winds of 200 kilometers per hour. Get out of there immediately! I am trying. But, Commander, you need to see this. There are large creatures swimming in the ocean while this storm happens above them. They are not hiding or running away. They are swimming toward the storm. As Dong-yun fought to control his probe in the violent weather, Minji watched her biological scanners. The life readings were getting stronger, not weaker. Somehow, the dangerous storm was bringing more creatures to the surface instead of driving them away. I am detecting chemicals in the air that would blind most species, Dr. Jinwoo reported. But the life forms down there seem to use these chemicals to communicate with each other. Communications specialist Su Young had been listening to radio signals from the planet. She suddenly looked up from her station with wide eyes. Commander, I am hearing voices. The intelligent species down there is talking about the storm. What are they saying? I do not understand their language yet. But they sound excited, happy even, like the storm is something good. Everyone on the bridge stared at her. The idea that intelligent creatures would be happy about weather that could destroy cities was beyond their understanding. There is more, Su-young continued. I am picking up signals from all over the planet. These beings have settlements everywhere, In the hot places, the cold places, even on islands surrounded by the dangerous storms, pilot Dong-Yun finally got his probe back to safe altitude. His hands were shaking as he took off his helmet. "Commander, that was the most dangerous weather I have ever seen. But while I was fighting to survive, I saw those creatures playing in the water below. Playing, Commander. Like it was fun for them." Commander Yuki looked around at her crew. They all had the same expression, fear mixed with amazement. Every piece of data they collected made the planet seem more impossible. Life should not be able to survive in such conditions, let alone thrive and spread everywhere. "Update our classification," she ordered. "This is definitely not a Class 8 world." "What should I put instead?" Dr. Jinwoo asked. Yuki stared at the planet on their main screen. It looked so peaceful from space, but she knew now that it was the most dangerous place any of them had ever encountered, and somehow it was completely full of life. "Class 13, she said quietly. "Maybe higher. We are going to need help understanding this place." The small metal object fell from the sky like a burning star. Commander Yuki watched from the bridge as it crashed into the planet's surface about 10 kilometers from where they had set up their research camp. "Was that one of their spacecraft?" she asked. Communications specialist Su Yung checked her instruments. "Yes, Commander. I picked up a distress signal just before it crashed. Someone is alive down there." "Are they calling for help?" That is the strange part. The signal stopped after a few minutes. Either they died or... Su-Young paused, looking confused. "Or they fixed whatever was wrong." Dr. Jinwoo was already putting on his environmental suit. "We should go look. If one of the planet's intelligent species is hurt, it could be our chance for first contact." Commander Yuki felt nervous. Everything they had learned about this world suggested that its creatures were dangerous beyond anything they knew. But they were explorers. This was their job. "Take the full protection gear," she ordered. "Emergency oxygen for 6 hours. Toxic, air filters, full body shields, and keep the shuttle ready to leave quickly." 20 minutes later, Dr. Jinwoo, pilot Dong-Yun, and Chief Surveyor Hana were walking across the planet's surface toward the crash site. Their heavy suits made walking difficult, but without them, the poisonous air would kill them in seconds. The radiation levels here would be illegal on most civilized worlds, Dr. Jinwoo reported through his radio. "How does anything live here?" Through their helmet screens, they could see strange plants growing everywhere. Some had thorns as long as knives. Others seemed to move when no wind was blowing. In the distance, they heard sounds that might have been animals, but they were unlike anything in the galactic databases. "I see the crash site," Hana said, pointing ahead. "The spacecraft broke into pieces, but wait. Someone is moving over there." They walked carefully toward the wreckage. What they saw made them stop and stare. A creature was standing next to the broken spacecraft, looking at the damaged parts. It was about 2 meters tall, standing on 2 legs like many intelligent species. But it was not wearing any kind of protective suit. It was breathing the poisonous air directly into its lungs. "Impossible," whispered Dr. Jinwoo. "The atmosphere would burn its respiratory system." The creature noticed them and walked over. As it got closer, they could see it looked somewhat like them, but different. It had only 2 eyes instead of 3 or 4. Its skin was a light brown color and seemed very thin. It should have been dead from radiation exposure. When the creature reached them, it made sounds with its mouth. So-Young had given them a basic translation device, but the sounds were unlike any language they had studied. The creature seemed to understand that they could not communicate with words. It pointed to itself and made a sound. Hyong. Dr. Jinwoo pointed to himself and said, "His name." The creature Hyong seemed pleased. Then Hyong did something that terrified them. He reached up and started removing parts of his damaged environmental helmet. "No!" Dr. Jinwoo shouted, even though he knew Hyong could not understand. "The air will kill you!" But Hyong just pulled off the broken helmet and took a deep breath of the poisonous atmosphere. He smiled at them and said something that sounded friendly. Hana's instruments were going crazy. "His body temperature is stable. Heart rate normal. He is not dying." "Check the air readings again," Dr. Jinwoo ordered. "Still showing toxic levels that would kill us in minutes. But look at this." Hana showed them her scanner. "His body is processing the oxygen perfectly, like this air is normal for him." Hyong seemed to notice their heavy protective suits. He looked worried and pointed at them, then at the sky. He was clearly asking if they were okay. "He is concerned about our safety," Dong-hyun realized. "While we are worried about his, he is worried about ours." Hyong walked back to his crashed spacecraft and picked up a small device. He touched some controls and it started making beeping sounds. Then he pointed to the sky and made gestures like something big was coming. "I think he is warning us about weather," Hana said, checking her instruments. "Oh no, there is a large storm system moving this way. We need to get back to the shuttle." But Hyong did not seem worried about the storm. Instead, he gathered some pieces from his crashed ship and started walking toward a rocky area nearby. He gestured for them to follow. They followed him to a small cave. Hyong went inside like it was perfectly safe. The three explorers checked their scanners before entering. "The cave is full of moisture that would rust our equipment," Dr. Jinwoo reported, "and I am detecting several types of bacteria that are unknown to our databases." Dangerous bacteria? Unknown. But on this planet, everything seems to be dangerous. They entered the cave carefully. Hyong had found some dry materials and was making a fire. With his bare hands, he picked up pieces of wood that their scanners said were covered in toxic plant oils. "He is touching poison with no protection," Hana whispered. "And now he is making fire with it. The smoke alone should kill him." But Hyong seemed comfortable. He sat by the fire and offered them places to sit. Through gestures, he showed them that they were safe from the coming storm. Outside, the weather arrived. Wind that could destroy buildings howled past the cave entrance. Rain fell that was so acidic it would eat through their shuttle's hull. Lightning struck the ground with enough power to run a small city, and Hyong just sat by his fire completely calm. "Commander Yuki," Dr. Jinwoo called on his radio. "We are safe, but you need to hear this. The planet's intelligent species can survive conditions that would kill most galactic citizens. They breathe the toxic air. They touch poisonous plants. And they treat deadly storms like minor weather." Through the static from the storm, he heard Yuki's worried voice. "Are you saying they are naturally adapted to live on a Class 13 death world?" Dr. Jinwoo looked at Hyong, who was now sharing some kind of food with them. The humans smiled and gestured to show the food was safe, but their scanners showed it contained chemicals that would be toxic to most species. "Commander," Dr. Jinwoo said slowly, "I think we need to revise our classification again. If this species considers these conditions normal, we might be dealing with something completely new." As the deadly storm raged outside, Hyong settled down to wait it out. He looked as comfortable as if he were sitting in a luxury hotel. For him, this was just another normal day on his death world home. The three explorers sat in their protective, Suits, surrounded by enough safety equipment to survive on the surface of a star, watching a creature that lived here with no protection at all. They were beginning to understand that everything they thought they knew about life in the galaxy was about to change. 2 days after meeting Yong, Commander Yuki received permission from the Galactic Council to observe the planet's intelligent species. They called themselves humans, and Yong had agreed to show the research team how his people lived. Dr. Sunwoo had been running medical scans on Hyung for hours. Every test result made her more confused and frightened. Commander, his bone structure is incredible. The density is 3 times what we consider normal. His skeleton could support the weight of our shuttle. What about his muscles? Even more strange. They work like tiny machines made of organic material. He can lift objects that would require mechanical assistance for most species. And his skin... Dr. Sunwoo paused, checking her readings again. His skin repairs itself. Small cuts heal in minutes. Commander Yuki nodded grimly. What else? His immune system is the most advanced I have ever seen. It fights off diseases that would kill entire populations on civilized worlds. It is like his body is a walking medical laboratory. Hyung had offered to take them to see a human settlement. Commander Yuki agreed, but only after making sure her team had every piece of safety equipment available. They followed Hyung across the landscape in their heavily armored shuttle. Looking out the windows, they saw him walking on the ground below, them, breathing the toxic air and stepping over plants that would dissolve their shoes. He is moving faster than our shuttle at low speed, pilot Dong-yun reported. How is he running that fast? More importantly, added Dr. Jin-woo, he has been running for 2 hours without stopping to rest. The oxygen levels here should make that impossible. They reached the edge of a human city as the sun was setting. Commander Yuki had seen cities on hundreds of worlds, but nothing like this. The buildings were designed to bend in strong winds instead of breaking. Some were built on platforms that could move up and down with flooding water. They build their cities expecting disasters, Engineer Minho observed. Look at these foundations. They are designed to survive earthquakes that would level any structure. We know. But the most shocking thing was the humans themselves. As their shuttle landed in a designated area, they saw human families walking around in the open air. Small humans, obviously children, were playing games in areas that their instruments, classified as extreme hazard zones. Commander, Dr. Sunwoo called out urgently. The radiation levels here would require evacuation warnings on any civilized world. But look, she pointed to her scanner. Human children are playing directly in those areas. Through the shuttle windows, they watched human children running and laughing in what should have been a deadly environment. Some were climbing on structures that would collapse under the weight of most galactic citizens. Others were playing with liquids that would burn through standard protective gear. The small humans are moving too fast, Pilot Dong-yun said, staring. Their reaction times are incredible, and they are playing with pets. Pets? Animals that would be classified as dangerous predators on most worlds. But the human children are feeding them and playing with them like they are harmless toys. Hyung knocked on their shuttle door and gestured for them to come out. The research team looked at each other nervously. Even with their full protective gear, stepping onto the surface of this world felt like walking into an active war zone. They opened the shuttle door and stepped out. Immediately, their suits began reporting dozens of environmental hazards. The air was full of particles that would damage their lungs. The ground contained chemicals that would poison most water supplies. And the background radiation was higher than the legal limit for most space stations. But the humans around them were walking around in simple clothing, breathing deeply and looking comfortable. Hyong led them down a street filled with human shops and homes. In one window, they saw a human family eating their evening meal. Dr. Sunwoo's food scanner analyzed what they were eating. Commander, they are consuming substances that would be classified as dangerous drugs on most worlds. Some of those plants evolved to be poisonous to prevent animals from eating them. But humans eat them for pleasure. What about those red liquids they are drinking? Fermented biological matter with high alcohol content. It would cause liver failure in most species, but they seem to drink it for fun. As they walked, meteorologist Yunbi noticed humans looking up at the sky and smiling. She checked her weather instruments and went pale. Commander, there is a major storm system approaching. Category 5 hurricane winds, hail the size of our fists, and enough lightning to power a small city. We need to take shelter immediately. But the humans around them were not seeking shelter. If anything, they seemed excited. Some were moving to higher ground to get a better view. Others were checking devices that appeared to be measuring the storm's approach. Are they evacuating? Commander Yuki asked. No, Commander. I think they are watching it for entertainment. Hyong noticed their concern and tried to communicate through gestures. He pointed to the approaching storm, smiled, and made gestures that seemed to indicate it was normal and not dangerous. He is telling us not to worry about weather that could destroy our shuttle, Dr. Jinwoo said in amazement. They took shelter in a building that Yong showed them. Inside, they found human families preparing for the storm by having a party. Children were excited, adults were cooking special food, and everyone seemed happy about the approaching disaster. Through the windows, they watched the storm hit. Winds that could flip aircraft over blew through the city. Hail, bigger than their heads, crashed down from the sky. Lightning struck buildings repeatedly, and the humans just watched it happen like it was a beautiful natural show. The buildings are not being destroyed, Engineer Minho observed. They bend and move, but they do not break. Human architecture is designed for this. Look at the drainage systems, added Dr. Jinwoo. Water that would flood any normal city is being channeled away through systems built into the ground. They have planned for this. As the storm passed, humans came back outside. Children ran into puddles of water that would be contaminated with dangerous chemicals on most worlds. Adults began cleaning up debris that would require hazardous material. Handling on civilized planets. They live like this every day, Commander Yuki realized. What we consider an emergency that would require evacuating an entire planet, they consider normal weather. Dr. Sunwoo was taking readings on the human children playing in the storm's aftermath. Commander, these young humans are showing no signs of stress from the environmental hazards. Their bodies are processing toxins and radiation like our bodies process normal air. And they are happy, added communications specialist Su Young, who had been listening to human conversations. I am beginning to understand their language. They are talking about how beautiful the storm was. Some are disappointed that it was not stronger. Commander Yuki looked around at the human city. These creatures had built a thriving civilization in conditions that would kill most galactic citizens in minutes. They raised their children in environments that would require emergency response teams elsewhere. And they did it all while seeming genuinely happy and content. We need to contact the Galactic Council immediately, she said. We are not just dealing with a Class 13 death world. We are dealing with a species that has turned a Class 13 death world into their comfortable home. As her team prepared their report, Commander Yuki watched human children playing outside in the toxic air under the dangerous sun, on ground that could poison most known life forms. And they were laughing. Back on their ship, the research team struggled to write their report. Commander Yuki had seen many strange things in 30 years of space exploration, but nothing like this. How do you explain to the Galactic Council that you have found a species that treats a death world like a comfortable home? Dr. Jimin had been studying the biological samples that Hyung had given them. Every test result challenged everything they knew about life in the galaxy. "Commander, look at this," she said, holding up a small container. "This is water from their city. It contains bacteria that would cause deadly diseases on most worlds, but humans drink it every day. Are the bacteria harmful to humans? That is the strange part. Not only are they not harmful, some of them seem to help humans stay healthy. It is like humans have made partnerships with dangerous microorganisms." Chief Science Officer Ji-hoon was analyzing human technology. He looked up from his workstation with a confused expression. "Their machines are built assuming constant danger. Look at this communication device Hyung showed us. It is designed to work underwater in extreme heat, after being dropped from great heights, and even after being struck by lightning." "Why would they need communication devices that can survive lightning strikes?" Commander Yuki asked. "Because lightning strikes are apparently common in their daily lives. They build everything expecting it to be damaged by their environment and then repaired." Navigation Officer Tae-hyung had been studying human history through the radio signals they had intercepted. What he found made everyone on the ship go quiet. "Commander, according to their historical records, this species has survived multiple extinction events. Asteroid impacts that should have sterilized the planet, ice ages that covered most of the surface in frozen death, volcanic eruptions that poisoned the air for years. How did they survive? They did not just survive. They became stronger. Each disaster seems to have made them more adaptable. Look at this data about their immune systems. Every plague that should have killed them instead taught their bodies how to fight new diseases." Commander Yuki sat down heavily in her chair. "Are you telling me that this species uses extinction events as evolutionary training?" "It looks that way, Commander. And there is more. They have not just survived their death world. They have learned to control parts of it. They redirect rivers, level mountains, and even change the weather in small areas." Biologist Jimin called up new data on her screen. "Commander, I need to show you something about human food. I thought they were just eating poisonous plants by accident. But no, they choose to eat dangerous things on purpose." "What do you mean?" "They have plants that evolved to be so spicy they cause pain when eaten. Humans grow these plants specifically to eat them. They compete to see who can eat the most painful ones." "That makes no sense." "It gets stranger. They eat the flesh of animals that fight back. Not dead animals, but living sea creatures that try to grab them with tentacles while being eaten. And they enjoy it." Communications specialist Soo-young had been working on translating more human languages. She discovered that humans had hundreds of different ways to communicate, and many of them had words for dangers that did not exist on civilized worlds. "Commander, they have over 30 different words for types of storms. Most languages have one word for bad weather. Humans have specific words for different kinds of deadly weather, and some of the words sound fond." "Fond of deadly weather?" "Yes, Commander. Like they have emotional attachments to different types of disasters." Chief Medical Officer Sun Woo had finished her analysis of human biology. Her report was the most disturbing of all. "Commander, I have been comparing human capabilities to every species in the galactic database. In terms of physical strength, they rank in the top 5%. In terms of healing ability, they are in the top 1%. In terms of adaptability to hostile environments, they have no equal." No equal? There are species stronger than humans. There are species that heal faster. But no species combines all of these abilities while also having advanced intelligence and space technology. Humans are physically powerful enough to be considered dangerous predators, but they also built a civilization and developed interstellar travel. Commander Yuki looked at the data surrounding her. Her team had discovered a species that survived. By eating poison, drinking contaminated water, breathing toxic air, and treating extinction-level disasters as minor inconveniences. And these same creatures had developed science and technology advanced enough to build spaceships. "What classification should we give their world?" she asked. The team looked at each other nervously. Dr. Jinwoo spoke first. "Our classification. System only goes to Class 13. Class 13 is supposed to be the most dangerous environment where any life could possibly exist. But humans do not just exist on this world. They thrive here. They are happy here. So what do we call it? I think we need a new classification. Class 14, maybe higher." "Class 14 has never existed," Navigation Officer Taehyung pointed out. "The Galactic Council will think we made an error." "Look at the evidence," Dr. Jimin said, gesturing to all their data. "We have found a species that treats what we classify as deadly poisons like food. They live comfortably in radiation levels that would require evacuation of most space stations. They raise their children in environments that would kill most adult galactic citizens. And they have space technology," added Chief Science Officer Ji-hoon. "If they decide to leave their world and visit other planets, they will be nearly indestructible compared to most species." Commander Yuki realized the full implications of what they had discovered. If humans were this tough on their own world, what would they be like on safer planets? A species adapted to survive Class 14 conditions would find most galactic worlds incredibly easy to live on. "There is something else," Dr. Sunwoo added quietly. "Their medical knowledge, because they constantly deal with injuries and diseases. That would be instantly fatal to most species. Their understanding of medicine is incredibly advanced. They routinely fix problems that our best doctors consider impossible." "And their engineering," Engineer Minho said. "They build everything to survive conditions that never occur on civilized worlds. Their structures would be nearly indestructible anywhere else in the galaxy." Commander Yuki stood up and walked to the window overlooking the human planet. It still looked beautiful and peaceful from space. But she knew now that it was the most dangerous place any galactic citizen had ever encountered, and it was home to a species that considered it comfortable. "Send the report to the Galactic Council," she ordered. "Classification. Earth is the galaxy's first Class 14 extreme death world with adaptive sapient life. Humans are to be classified as Tier 1 survival species." "Tier 1?" asked Dr. Jimin. "That classification has never been used." "Because we have never needed it before," Commander Yuki replied. "We have found a species that could probably survive anywhere in the galaxy. The question is not whether they can survive contact with galactic civilization. The question is whether galactic civilization can survive contact with them." As the report was transmitted across space to the Galactic Council, Commander Yuki wondered how the peaceful species of the galaxy would react to learning that the universe contained creatures who considered death worlds to be comfortable homes. Communications specialist Su-young had been working day and night to understand human languages and decode their historical records. What she discovered in their data archives made her hands shake as she called Commander Yuki to her station. "Commander, you need to see this immediately. I have been reading human history, and it is not what we expected," Commander Yuki looked at the translated documents on Su-Young's screen. What am I looking at? Human historical records going back thousands of years. Commander, they have not just survived on this death world, they have conquered it. So-Young showed her data about human civilization. Look at this. Humans started as simple creatures living in caves, hiding from the dangerous animals and deadly weather. But instead of staying hidden, they learned to fight back. The records showed how humans had gradually taken control of their hostile environment. They learned to make fire to protect themselves from cold that would kill most galactic species. They developed tools to hunt animals that were bigger and stronger than themselves. They built shelters that could survive storms that would flatten most structures. But, Commander, this is where it gets truly frightening. They did not stop at survival. They began changing their world to suit their needs. Chief Science Officer Ji-hoon joined them at the communication station. What do you mean changing their world? Su-Young pulled up more historical records. They redirected rivers to bring water to dry areas. They flattened mountains to build cities. They dug tunnels, threw solid rock to travel faster. They even learned to predict and prepare for natural disasters. That is advanced engineering, Ji-hoon admitted. But many species learn to modify their environments. Not like this, Su-Young said, showing them more data. Humans did not just modify safe environments. They modified hostile death world conditions while living in them. They built cities next to active volcanoes and learned to use the heat as energy. They created farms in areas where the soil was naturally poisonous and learned to clean it. Commander Yuki studied the records. Human civilization had not developed in safe, protected areas like most species. They had built their entire society, while constantly fighting for survival against their own planet. Show me their technology development, she ordered. Su-Young brought up technical documents. This is the most disturbing part, Commander. Human technology is not designed for convenience like most galactic technology. It is designed for survival. She showed them examples of human medical technology. Their medical knowledge comes from treating injuries that would be instantly fatal to most galactic citizens. They routinely perform medical procedures that our best doctors would consider impossible. What kind of procedures? Replacing damaged body parts with artificial ones, repairing hearts while they are still beating, removing damaged organs and installing mechanical replacements. And Commander, they do these procedures on themselves, in emergency situations, with simple tools. Dr. Sunwoo had joined them and was reading the medical records. This is incredible. They have documented treatments for injuries from animal attacks, poisoning from toxic plants, radiation exposure, extreme temperature damage, and pressure injuries from their weather. But it gets more impressive, Su-Young continued. Look at their transportation technology. She showed them records of human vehicles. They do not just build machines to move from place to place. They build machines that can survive the journey. Their vehicles are designed to work in extreme heat, freezing cold, high radiation, toxic atmospheres, and under attack by hostile wildlife. Engineer Minho was amazed. These specifications would be considered military grade on most worlds, but humans use them for everyday transportation. Because everyday life on their world requires military-grade equipment, Commander Yuki realized. There is more, Su-Young said. Their space program. She brought up records of human space exploration. What they saw made the entire crew go silent. Commander, humans launch themselves off their death world using controlled explosions. They strap themselves to devices filled with substances that could level cities and use them to escape their planet's gravity. Controlled explosions? Pilot Dong-Yun asked. How do they control explosions powerful enough for spaceflight? Very carefully, Su-Young replied. But Commander, look at this. Their space technology is designed assuming that everything will go wrong. Their spacecraft have backup systems for their backup systems. They plan for multiple simultaneous failures and still expect to survive. Chief Science Officer Jihoon was reading the technical specifications. These spacecraft could survive impacts that would destroy most galactic vessels, and they are designed to be repaired in space with minimal tools by the crew members themselves. Why would they need to repair spacecraft in space? Commander Yuki asked. Because their space program assumes that everything will break down eventually. They do not build things expecting them to work perfectly. They build things expecting them to be damaged and then repaired multiple times. Dr. Sunwoo was studying human training records. Commander, look at how they prepare their space travelers. The training would be considered torture on most civilized worlds. She showed them records of human astronaut training. Humans were spun in machines until most galactic citizens would become unconscious. They were placed in environments that simulated the vacuum of space. They were trained to function while experiencing physical stress that would disable most other species. And they volunteer for this training, she added. Humans compete for the chance to undergo this preparation. What about their space missions? Commander Yuki asked. Su-young brought up records of human space exploration. They send small crews on journeys that last for months or years, in vehicles that have no room for error. If something goes wrong, there is no rescue. They have to fix it themselves or die. And they do this for scientific knowledge, she continued. Not for resources or territory. They risk their lives to learn new things about the universe. Engineer Minho was reading construction records. Commander, look at how they built their space launch facilities. They are located in areas that experience regular severe weather. Hurricanes, earthquakes, flooding. But they built structures that can function normally even during these disasters. Most species build spaceports in the safest possible locations, pilot Dong-Yun observed. Humans build them in dangerous locations and then design them to work anyway. Commander Yuki realized that everything they had learned about humans pointed to the same conclusion. This was not a species that had barely survived on a death world. This was a species that had turned death world survival into an art form. They have spent thousands of years learning to thrive in conditions that would kill most galactic citizens immediately, she said. Every aspect of their civilization is built around the assumption that they live in constant danger. And now, they have space technology, Chief Science Officer Jihoon added quietly. Commander Yuki understood the implications. If humans could thrive in Class 14 Death World conditions, what would they be capable of on safer galactic worlds? If their technology was designed to survive constant disasters, how would it perform in stable environments? Prepare a supplemental report, she ordered. The Galactic Council needs to understand that we are not just dealing with survivors. We are dealing with a species that has turned survival into a science. If they join galactic civilization, they will not be asking for our protection. They will be offering their expertise to everyone else. As her crew worked on the new report, Commander Yuki looked out at the human planet again. She was beginning to understand that first contact with humans would not be about helping a primitive species join galactic society. It would be about galactic society learning from the ultimate survivors. Communications specialist Su-young had been working day and night to understand human languages and decode their historical records. What she discovered in their data archives made her hands shake as she called Commander Yuki to her station. Commander, you need to see this immediately. I have been reading human history, and it is not what we expected. Commander Yuki looked at the translated documents on Su-young's screen. What am I looking at? Human historical records going back thousands of years. Commander, they have not just survived on this death world, they have conquered it. So-young showed her data about human civilization. Look at this. Humans started as simple creatures living in caves, hiding from the dangerous animals and deadly weather. But instead of staying hidden, they learned to fight back. The records showed how humans had gradually taken control of their hostile environment. They learned to make fire to protect themselves from cold that would kill most galactic species. They developed tools to hunt animals that were bigger and stronger than themselves. They built shelters that could survive storms that would flatten most structures. But, Commander, this is where it gets truly frightening. They did not stop at survival. They began changing their world to suit their needs. Chief Science Officer Ji-hoon joined them at the communication station. What do you mean changing their world? So-young pulled up more historical records. They redirected rivers to bring water to dry areas. They flattened mountains to build cities. They dug tunnels through solid rock to travel faster. They even learned to predict and prepare for natural disasters. That is advanced engineering, Ji-hoon admitted. But many species learn to modify their environments. Not like this, So-young said, showing them more data. Humans did not just modify safe environments. They modified hostile death world conditions while living in them. They built cities next to active volcanoes and learned to use the heat as energy. They created farms in areas where the soil was naturally poisonous and learned to clean it. Commander Yuki studied the records. Human civilization had not developed in safe, protected areas like most species. They had built their entire society, while constantly fighting for survival against their own planet. Show me their technology development, she ordered. So-young brought up technical documents. This is the most disturbing part, Commander. Human technology is not designed for convenience like most galactic technology. It is designed for survival. She showed them examples of human medical technology. Their medical knowledge comes from treating injuries that would be instantly fatal to most galactic citizens. They routinely perform medical procedures that our best doctors would consider impossible. What kind of procedures? Replacing damaged body parts with artificial ones, repairing hearts while they are still beating, removing damaged organs and installing mechanical replacements. And Commander, they do these procedures on themselves, in emergency situations, with simple tools. Dr. Sunwoo had joined them and was reading the medical records. This is incredible. They have documented treatments for injuries from animal attacks, poisoning from toxic plants, radiation exposure, extreme temperature damage, and pressure injuries from their weather. But it gets more impressive, So-young continued. Look at their transportation technology. She showed them records of human vehicles. They do not just build machines to move from place to place. They build machines that can survive the journey. Their vehicles are designed to work in extreme heat, freezing cold, high radiation, toxic atmospheres, and under attack by hostile wildlife. Engineer Minho was amazed. These specifications would be considered military grade on most worlds, but humans use them for everyday transportation. Because everyday life on their world requires military-grade equipment, Commander Yuki realized. There is more, So-young said. Their space program. She brought up records of human space exploration. What they saw made the entire crew go silent. Commander, humans launch themselves off their death world using controlled explosions. They strap themselves to devices filled with substances that could level cities and use them to escape their planet's gravity. Controlled explosions? Pilot Dong-yun asked. How do they control explosions powerful enough for spaceflight? Very carefully, So-young replied. But Commander, look at this. Their space technology is designed assuming that everything will go wrong. Their spacecraft have backup systems for their backup systems. They plan for multiple simultaneous failures and still expect to survive. Chief Science Officer Jihoon was reading the technical specifications. These spacecraft could survive impacts that would destroy most galactic vessels, and they are designed to be repaired in space with minimal tools by the crew members themselves. Why would they need to repair spacecraft in space? Commander Yuki asked. Because their space program assumes that everything will break down eventually. They do not build things expecting them to work perfectly. They build things expecting them to be damaged and then repaired multiple times. Dr. Sunwoo was studying human training records. Commander, look at how they prepare their space travelers. The training would be considered torture on most civilized worlds. She showed them records of human astronaut training. Humans were spun in machines until most galactic citizens would become unconscious. They were placed in environments that simulated the vacuum of space. They were trained to function while experiencing physical stress that would disable most other species. And they volunteer for this training, she added. Humans compete for the chance to undergo this preparation. What about their space missions? Commander Yuki asked. Su Young brought up records of human space exploration. They send small crews on journeys that last for months or years, in vehicles that have no room for error. If something goes wrong, there is no rescue. They have to fix it themselves or die. And they do this for scientific knowledge, she continued. Not for resources or territory. They risk their lives to learn new things about the universe. Engineer Minho was reading construction records. Commander, look at how they built their space launch facilities. They are located in areas that experience regular severe weather. Hurricanes, earthquakes, flooding. But they built structures that can function normally even during these disasters. Most species build spaceports in the safest possible locations, Pilot Dongyun observed. Humans build them in dangerous locations and then design them to work anyway. Commander Yuki realized that everything they had learned about humans pointed to the same conclusion. This was not a species that had barely survived on a death world. This was a species that had turned death world survival into an art form. They have spent thousands of years learning to thrive in conditions that would kill most galactic citizens immediately, she said. Every aspect of their civilization is built around the assumption that they live in constant danger. And now, they have space technology, Chief Science Officer Jihoon added quietly. Commander Yuki understood the implications. If humans could thrive in Class 14 Death World conditions, what would they be capable of on safer galactic worlds? If their technology was designed to survive constant disasters, how would it perform in stable environments? Prepare a supplemental report, she ordered. The Galactic Council needs to understand that we are not just dealing with survivors. We are dealing with a species that has turned survival into a science. If they join galactic civilization, they will not be asking for our protection. They will be offering their expertise to everyone else. As her crew worked on the new report, Commander Yuki looked out at the human planet again. She was beginning to understand that first contact with humans would not be about helping a primitive species join galactic society. It would be about galactic society learning from the ultimate survivors. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened 3 days after Commander Yuki's report reached the capital world. Representatives from 47 different species gathered in the Great Hall, their various forms creating a rainbow of colors and shapes under the soft lighting. Counselor Nari of the Peaceful Worlds Alliance stood at the central podium, her pale blue skin showing stress patterns that her species displayed when deeply worried. As the elected speaker for species that had never known warfare or natural disasters, she was having trouble accepting what she had read. "Fellow council members," she began, her voice carrying the musical tones her people used for serious discussions. "We face something unprecedented in galactic history. Commander Yuki's research team has discovered what they classify as a Class 14 deathworld inhabited by sapient life." A ripple of concerned sounds went through the assembly. Class 14 had never existed before. The classification system had been designed by the galaxy's safest species, and they had never imagined that life could exist in conditions worse than Class 13. "But the classification of the world is not our primary concern," Counselor Nari continued. "Our concern is the species that lives there. These humans appear to be naturally adapted to survive in environments that would kill most of us within minutes." Trade Representative Seo-jun rose from his seat in the commercial section. His species had built their success on finding profitable opportunities in dangerous situations, and he saw potential where others saw threat. Counselor Nari, with respect, "I believe you are looking at this situation incorrectly. Yes, these humans are adapted to survive in extreme conditions, but consider what this means for galactic expansion." He activated a holographic display showing the galaxy map. "We currently use less than 30% of available worlds because the rest are too dangerous for colonization. Worlds with extreme weather, hostile atmospheres, dangerous radiation, or unstable geology." The display highlighted thousands of unused worlds throughout galactic space. If humans can thrive in Class 14 conditions, they could settle worlds that we consider uninhabitable. This could double or triple the territory available for galactic civilization. Military Advisor Young-ho stood up in the defense section. His species had evolved as warriors, but even they had limits to what they considered survivable combat conditions. Trade Representative Seo-jun raises an interesting point about expansion, he said in the low, rumbling voice his people used for serious military discussions. "But I am more concerned about the strategic implications." He brought up his own holographic display showing various combat scenarios. According to Commander Yuki's reports, these humans consider conditions that would disable our best soldiers to be normal daily life. They breathe air that would poison our troops. They drink water that would cause immediate illness. They eat food that would be classified as biological weapons. Counselor Nari felt her stress patterns becoming more visible. "Are you suggesting these humans pose a military threat?" "I am suggesting that if they decided to pose a military threat, we would have no effective response," Military Advisor Young-ho replied grimly. "A species that considers deathworld conditions to be comfortable cannot be fought using conventional military strategies." "But they show no signs of aggression," protested Science Advisor Hein from the research section. "Commander Yuki's reports indicate they are curious and friendly. The human called Hyong helped the research team survive a dangerous storm." "That is exactly what concerns me," Military Advisor Young-ho said. "They helped galactic citizens survive conditions that were normal and comfortable for them. This suggests they understand how fragile we are compared to them." The council chamber filled with worried discussions as representatives realized the full implications. A species that could help other galactic citizens survive extreme conditions was also a species that could easily harm them if they chose to. Economic. Advisor Minho from the banking world stood to address the financial implications. "Fellow council members, we must consider the economic impact of this discovery. If humans can work in environments that require expensive protective equipment for other species, they could dominate industries like mining, construction, and hazardous materials handling. Are you saying they would take jobs from other species? Asked Counselor Nari. I am saying they would make other species unable to compete in dangerous industries. Why hire a crew that needs expensive life support systems when you can hire humans who can work in those conditions with no protection? This caused even more worried discussion. The galactic economy was built on the assumption that all species had roughly similar environmental needs and capabilities. If one species could work safely in conditions that required expensive safety measures for others, it could disrupt entire industries. Environmental specialist Yunbi rose from the ecological section. There is another consideration. These humans have spent thousands of years modifying their Deathworld environment. If they apply the same techniques to other worlds, they could terraform planets much more quickly and efficiently than current methods allow. Is that good or bad? Asked Counselor Nari. It could be very good for expansion and colonization, but it also means they have the capability to modify planetary environments. If they ever decided to make a world uninhabitable for other species while remaining comfortable for themselves, they have the knowledge to do so. Cultural advisor Su-Young stood in the social sciences section. She had been studying the translated human communications that Commander Yuki had provided. Council members, I have been analyzing human social structures and cultural patterns. What I have found is both reassuring and concerning. She activated her display showing human cultural data. Humans appear to have strong social bonds and cooperative instincts. They regularly risk their own safety to help other humans. However, their concept of helping involves exposing others to conditions that most species would consider lethal. What do you mean? Counselor Nari asked. Human parents deliberately expose their children to dangerous environments as part of normal development. They consider it necessary for proper growth. If they apply the same approach to other species, they might accidentally harm us while trying to help us become stronger. The council chamber grew quiet as representatives considered this possibility. A species that thought Deathworld conditions were good for character development might have very different ideas about what constituted proper care for other species. Ambassador Kyung-soo of the Contact Protocol Division finally stood to address the central question. Council members, we are debating the implications of contact with humans as if we have a choice about whether to make contact. But according to Commander Yuki's reports, humans have space technology. They are already capable of interstellar travel. This statement caused the loudest reaction yet. Species throughout the chamber began talking at once, their various forms of communication creating a cacophony of sounds, lights, and movements. The question is not whether we should contact them, Ambassador Kyung-soo continued once the noise died down. The question is whether we should contact them first or wait for them to contact us. What difference does it make? Asked Counselor Nari. If we contact them first, we control the circumstances of first contact. We can meet them in a safe, controlled environment. If we wait for them to contact us, they might arrive unannounced at one of our worlds, not understanding how dangerous they are to us. Military advisor Young-ho nodded grimly. A human ship landing at a civilian spaceport could cause casualties just from atmospheric contamination. Their normal exhaust products might be toxic to local populations. So what do we do? Counselor Nari asked the assembly. Trade Representative Seojun spoke first. We approach them carefully as potential partners in galactic expansion. Military advisor Young-ho disagreed. We approach them carefully as potentially the most dangerous species we have ever encountered. Science advisor Hein had a different view. We approach them carefully as teachers who could help us understand survival techniques we never needed to learn. Ambassador Kyung-soo looked around the chamber at all the worried, excited, and confused faces of 47 different species. I suggest we approach them very carefully as the species that is about to change everything we thought we knew about life in the galaxy. The vote was close, but the Council decided to authorize formal first contact with humanity. As the representatives filed out of the chamber, each was wondering the same thing. Were they about to welcome new friends to galactic civilization, or had they just voted to meet the most formidable species the galaxy had ever seen?